Hello and welcome to Ignore All Previous Instructions. My name is Pam and I'm here with Asheesh. Asheesh, will you please introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. My name's Asheesh Laroia. I am a security engineer at Figma right now. Before this, I've done a bunch of things. I ran a nonprofit to get more people involved in open source, which is actually how we met, Pam and I. And then uh, that was 10-ish years ago. And then 1-ish years ago, I was a software engineer at Code for America. And I live in Philly and now have a 7-ish month old kid
Oh my
with
gosh,
my wife Sarah.
he's so cute.
Yeah,
Um,
he really is very cute, and
yes.
he looks like the cartoon image of a baby that our friend Kit made using an image generation AI thing. He was born a few months after the baby shower for which this cartoon was
Right.
made, but yet,
That's true. He does look a lot like the cartoon baby.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Um, so I think one of the things, because we had talked a little bit when I was like, you should come on my show, that you did some work around the IRS e-file
Yeah.
things that are going on, which I don't know that people other than government and civic nerds care about it yet. They'll care a lot about it in March.
Right.
So, um, but yeah, I just remember you were like, "Oh, I guess this is now it's a thing. It's a big thing."
Yeah. Do you want me to tell you about what I worked on and like that bit of the history of that
Sure,
project?
let's do that.
The upshot for right now is that the IRS ran a pilot that it concluded worked to operate its own free of cost online self prep tax product. They call that IRS Direct File,
Mm.
and uh, the the most recent way that I was involved in it is that up until around a year ago, I was working on the for the pilot. When I was at Code for America, we were one of the two organizations that partnered with the IRS to help uh, with handoff of state tax returns. The pilot identified that the IRS thinks it can run a free online tax prep product for federal, or maybe it can, but it doesn't think it has the authority to do that for state taxes.
Probably. Do
And
you think it means that way in a legal sense, or in a infrastructure sense, or in a that's complicated sense?
my impression, and I was never any of the policy people at Code for America, but I spoke with them sometimes. My impression is that the IRS said that it was in a legal sense. And originally, I found this baffling. But I think that what this really means is like they don't have the legal authority to spend money doing the work that it would be.
Oh.
But I'm not sure because then again, they told me it was a federalism thing. So maybe
Yeah,
also
I
it's
I
more
I
about
would
general
think that
authority.
it would have more to do with states and like because the money from state taxes goes to those state treasuries, one might
Sure.
assume.
Yeah. What
And
I
so then
mean,
why would the federal government inject themselves into that situation?
well, whether or not the money from state taxes goes to the states, which it does, what I meant about the IRS sort of not being allowed to spend money on state tax prep is the hypothetical that Congress writes the IRS's budget, to my understanding, and
Sure.
nothing in the budget enumerates the IRS's ability to spend money helping people file their state taxes. That's
Mm.
that's what I mean. As I think about it, I don't know if that's the actual case, the actual reason. What people said was a federalism thing, more in line with what you're saying, that they sort of
Mm.
shouldn't inject themselves in the middle. But they do as a mechanical matter. The way that e-file works for state taxes, I have learned, is that a tax prep product for uh, call it online tax file uh,
Keep
will
keep other names out of it.
uh, well actually any okay.
I mean, they all work the same way. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. The way they all work is that they generate some
you fill
XML.
out your federal,
Well,
and then they say, "Oh, your federal's ready. Now we can do your state."
well, sure.
Is
Uh,
it?
Sort of yes, sort of no. What I
Okay.
that's true, and there's something fundamental about the sequencing there. But what I mean is that the IRS is involved, and the way the IRS is involved is that the XML data that contains your that is what people well, that is what the IRS's technical people at Modernized eFile call your e-filing submission. Your e-file submission is a bunch of XML which contains a digital representation of what might be on a Form 1040 in a PDF or on
Mm-hmm.
paper. And that gets sent to the to the modernized e-file servers that the IRS operates. But for the state taxes, they also use a modernized e-file XML content document thing, and that gets sent to the IRS. You'd think it would get sent to the state. The state certainly is the one processing it. So what happens is the IRS receives it, and then they send it to the state.
So the IRS is already in the middle.
The IRS is already just mechanically in the middle, and
Ah,
it
and
was.
so this is why you're like, why is there?
I mean, the way they're in the middle is that, as I understand it, many states have agreed to join the modernized e-file project, and I think that it was. I think it started in the 20ish years ago ballpark, and states chose to be on the receiving end of this like routing system. Yeah,
Mm,
but so maybe they don't have the authority to represent the tax filer, and that the it's sort of fine for in a federalism sense for the IRS to be mechanically in the middle if they think that they're just transmitting the data. But anyway, I don't know. The person who would know more about this is one of my old colleagues at Code for America, Gabriel Zucker. So maybe we can call him sometime.
for
Uh,
like the policy side.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's true anyway that the IRS direct file pilot did not include people's ability to file their state taxes, and they identified this as a key matter to be addressed in the pilot because people to comply with state laws need to file state taxes, or generally, not literally everyone, but almost everyone. And it wouldn't be a very compelling offering if the IRS made a nice website for filing your federal taxes and then said, cool, we have no plan for you to fully comply with your obvious tax requirements. So what they did is they invited organizations to be handoff providers where somebody, in the case of us a year ago at Code for America, us, were partnered with the IRS's direct file team to receive the federal data blob and then show it back to be redirected
Do state
in the
stuff.
client and be asked the state questions. Yeah, and then we
Can
would
you
send
say
that.
what state you worked with?
Yeah. The file your statetaxes.org website, which Code for America ran, and I think is
Mm-hmm.
still running now. I think worked with New York taxes and Arizona taxes. And I was personally in like Zoom or Teams or whatever it was meetings with the New York State people,
Mm-hmm.
and then like figured out how to uh, build enough of their tax rules in our code and enough UI so that people could follow the flow. Some of which involves to go back to sort of the sequence of events. The deal is that what I worked on most recently was I was the tech lead at the time for the Code for America Tax Benefits org, where we worked on
Mm-hmm.
File Your State Taxes, which received federal direct file data through on behalf of the customer of the free tax prep pilot product the IRS made, direct file, and then show them an interface for filling out their New York or Arizona taxes. And um, this was a big effort, and it was we were able to do it because we'd already done e-filing before uh, within Code for America. And as far as I know, have been the only not-for-profit that has ever been an e-filer.
Hmm.
I think. And being an
That like
e-filer,
tax slayer thing is not a nonprofit.
no, TaxSlayer is a for-profit product.
Hmm.
It's
Okay.
fine though. I've used it in the
Yeah.
past.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it is recommended by some not-for-profits that help people with their taxes. So that might be
That's
why you're.
why, yeah, because I did a little bit of explorative thinking about volunteering with the Code for America program, Get Your Refund, something like
Yes.
that name, but where they
Yes.
help people, you know, go go get the government money that they want to give you.
Yep. Yep.
You have to fill out a form to do it, but it can happen. But then it
Yeah.
was like during the pandemic and I was on the internet too much anyway, and so I ended up not doing it. But it's a very
Yeah.
cool program.
Cool. Yes. Well, going backwards in time from, well, that's basically the first public-facing web product that the Code for America tax benefits team built. The
Was
Get
the
Your
get your
Refund.
refund thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
And originally, and yeah, like it relies on volunteers. This is like the 2020, 2020 through ongoing
Hmm. Yep.
timeline.
Hmm.
It relies on volunteers to work with the existing network of free tax prep organizations called VITA.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
and that's sort of how the tax benefit, that was the first thing the tax benefits team worked on. The tax benefits team at Code for America was supposed to be a team that worked on uh, job training programs for Americans. There was a sort of effort to research if Code for America could help with the like job training programs that
Oh, and this is the
cities
thing that
and
then
counties
turned
do.
into the tax team.
Yeah, because
Okay, I was trying to draw the line between job training and tax team, and I was like, I was missing
there's
it.
a big gulf. And the deal is that the nice people who did that original research, who I think were Annalise Grimm, Ben Golder, and Kelly McBride, and Nicole Rappin, I think these four people, uh, they visited people who needed jobs, who were doing the job training things, and they learned in person from talking with them that what they needed was money to get around to their job interviews. And many of them were eligible for the earned income tax credit
Hmm.
that uh, is a refundable credit. That's I think it's the nation's biggest anti-poverty program. But you have to know to file your taxes, yeah,
Hmm.
even if
Which
you
is
don't owe any
100%
money.
people. One of the first things they do is they stop filing their taxes because they're afraid they're going to go the government money.
Yeah, yeah, that's
So,
possible. If you truly have no income in a year, maybe that doesn't happen to you because you're like, how there's no income. Why would there be an income tax? And in fact, you would probably receive a refund from nothing. But yeah, there's a lot of misunderstandings about the tax system. I'm sure I personally still have many, and uh, so that was the first thing we did. Those four people, I think it was those four, pitched the Code for America executive team that instead of like building a web product to help people with job training stuff, we should build a web product to give people the money that the tax system already wants them to get, as you said. And somehow they made a compelling case, and then GetYourRefund.org was born. And I joined a few months into GetYourRefund.org when I joined in July 2020, and that thing evolved over time. At first, it was really just a marketing site for all the existing VITA sites, a way to
mm,
find a VITA site. And then it grew into a communication platform for tax filers to communicate with their tax preparers who are volunteers at VITA organizations. Uh, and then we had the chance to we had the idea and chance, I think, due to Gabriel Zucker and David, whose last name I'm blanking on, who I thought about prepping his name, and I'm totally gonna Google it. One second. You're gonna cut this out, but I'm gonna feel much
no,
better.
I'm not. I don't
David Newville.
I don't edit
Great.
very well.
Uh,
So there'll be some
Dave.
nice keyboard clackings.
Yeah. David Newville and Gabe Zucker uh, worked to refocus the tax team on a website that was a direct e-file product for the advance refundable child tax credit in 2021, I believe.
Hmm.
Um, and so, in a hurry, we built an e-file product, and
Mm.
we only could serve people if they had extremely simple tax needs. In fact, if they had almost no income and they had children. Therefore, filling out the digital 1040 and flicking it off to the IRS's e-file network was like pretty easy. It was actually a massive slog, but it would have been impossible if we had had more requirements. And uh, that worked out pretty well. So then we did it again the next year because there was still the opportunity to serve people with that temporary extra refundable child tax credit. And then after that sort of was no longer going to be useful for us to do because it wasn't getting renewed, we found the opportunity to be a state filer. And so we'd already built all this infrastructure for doing e-file. Oh my goodness. Which
What was that? Like memories of e-filing?
yeah, I mean the like I think it's fair to say, okay, it's literally true that Shannon Byrne, another engineer at Code for America, and I
Hmm.
were the two people charged with finding out if Code for America could have had the technical chops and the time and
Sure.
a plan to
Can
be
we do this
e-filers.
thing?
Can we do
Yeah.
this thing?
Hmm.
And we concluded the answer was yes. But I would
Hmm.
also say that both of us were needed, and therefore including me, to have this thing work out. Like, I remember the IRS's e-file sample code, Java code, simply didn't run on Macs, despite Java being write once, run anywhere. Uh, but I did
It simply
something.
didn't.
It simply didn't. It like crashed
That's
with some class not found problem. I forget. And I
that
like
was just
patched.
like it was just like it's not worth figuring out how to run this on this Unix based system.
Oh, I mean, it probably ran on. Well, yeah. I mean, they target Windows machines for sure.
Right.
Um, I did some like wacky jar patching. I forget exactly, and I was able to
Hmm.
run their GUI that you can use to fling eFile XML at the IRS, which I guess is like a sample desktop app for individual tax preparers sitting at their Windows PC, like writing out their like paper notes, uh,
Hmm.
doing people's taxes on a calculator, and then handwriting in something into 1040, and then going to another program probably and making a digital XML 1040, and then using this hypothetical desktop app. I mean, this real desktop app, but maybe it's just a proof of concept for other ones you can buy to fling that over to the IRS. Anyway, so I looked at how this desktop app worked and uh, uh, found like basically the 20 lines of code from their SDK we actually needed to call, despite the
Mm.
many, many more lines we were given by mimicking
The
the desktop app.
send thing to IRS.
And then there's another thing you need to do, which is uh, find out find out if the IRS has received it well, or instead if they've rejected it with some reasons.
Sure. So inquiring for status.
Bingo.
So
Uh,
you
the
send
SD,
it and you also want to know how it went.
yep, which are different actions because why not?
Yes.
Maybe they're different actions because it's a mainframe. I never saw the mainframe, but I assume it is. Uh,
If you don't see it, is there a mainframe?
well, I think so
I think
in this
so.
case.
I think so.
Yes, there were. Oh my gosh, we had to get an extended validation website HTTPS certificate. We had
Hmm.
to get a different HTTPS certificate called an IGC certificate, which was how you authenticate to the API. You might think they use OAuth and bearer tokens or
Mm.
a basic auth or an API key that's fixed. No, they use Java signed XML, which is signed with a TLS certificate that you have to buy from IdenTrust or maybe any of a few two other vendors, I don't know, that sell
Mm.
IGC certificates. And so long as your cert has been added to the IRS's beautiful website for uploading your cert, uh, then it's assigned to your sort of IRS e-filing account. And they'll only accept the public part of the cert that is signed, that is made with one of these IGC certs. So you have to figure out how to get those. And there were a bunch of these like technical hurdles that I was pretty essential for us being able to cross the chasm, I would say. And so, but we did. We did all enough proofing of concept, and then there were more technical hurdles as we actually made the thing. But it was a great
Mm.
collaborative effort. Um, but the reason I was sort of laughing at or smirking or whatever it was a few minutes ago. It's just that like
Mm-hmm.
it's so weird to me that uh, it's so weird and good that my like ability to get to understand I didn't trust IGC certificates is like why Code for America was
A
able to
key component.
get
That
people
is pretty
hundreds of
funny.
millions of dollars.
What is
Like
hundreds of million dollars?
the amount of money that Code for America got people through the child tax credit website that we made.
Oh, in terms of the impact.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that the impact
And
is wild.
that's just those 2-ish years of the of Get CTC, and then with File Your State Taxes, we were one of the two partners that did the state taxes for the IRS. And to my understanding, uh, well, so I'm not sure if the IRS would have considered their pilot a success based on the other state partner. Maybe they would have. Honestly, I don't actually know that much about the other state partner and how they did, but I know that
Mm,
we did great, and
cool.
uh, so it's now a real thing, and I think that it's I I'm curious if New York and Arizona will still be using get fileyourstatetaxes.org to do their
That
direct
will be
file handoff.
curious.
I mean,
By
they
like,
probably know by now, although maybe
well,
it's not announced.
by the law of like, if a thing that works but could be better exists, you won't do anything. Like, that's why I would bet on them still using it
Yeah,
because even though it could be better, what is this? This is the favorite example of this technology is why France had the Minitel for so long.
what's
Love the
wrong with Minitel?
Minitel. The Minitel.
Yeah,
You know the Minitel?
a little bit. 'Cause I took French class in
It's the
school.
cute computer information phone system that the
Yeah,
people used to have in France and like was very useful. But then when people started having this weird internet thing, people in France were like, why would I need the internet when I have the Minitel?
for a while. Yeah,
It gets
until
me what I need.
yeah,
Um, so there's
yeah.
probably
So
some name for that. This is good enough. Uh, experience.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
But I don't
honestly,
know
I
what you
think
call
our
it.
the File Your State Taxes experience is quite good. It's a
Probably.
nice server-side rendered Rails app, and it's how I learned Rails. And I knew Ruby before, thankfully, and um, uh, and therefore it doesn't have like 1,000 loading spinners.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's like web performance is relatively consistent. It's relatively simple for a like 6, 7, 8 person engineering team to improve it. But I do know the state of New Jersey is using it. You know how I know that, Pam?
How do you know it, Asheesh?
You do know. Come on, you're not answering the
I do.
question.
It's because it sounded like a tee up. It's because we got a friend working on it. I don't know if they
Yes.
want to be name checked though.
Okay.
So,
Well,
but one of our cool friends is working on it, and so it's
yes.
you know,
Yeah,
the
it was like
network
short.
of.
Shortly after I left my job at Code for America, I was telling this friend in the like intermission of an orchestra show that she invited me to about how I was just amazed that working at Code for America, I saw how the thing that matters is delivering user value and making the product better and better for customers and shipping code and shipping like uh, collaboratively with your teammates, and how it really underscored that some bits of technical excellence are not so important. Like
Mm,
this code base has one, maybe two so-called God models, which just means a database table that sort of everything is in.
sure.
Um, it arguably has three, and you're like, how could you have three God models? That's too many. But
Your
don't worry, two of them are
in
one to one with each other, except sometimes one is
Animist.
missing. So whatever, it's actually fine. Hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe it's billions of client impact later. No one needs us
Yeah.
to clean up that particular part of the mess. There's other parts of the mess that were good to clean up, and we did, like tracking. We were always quite good at tracking the status of people's e-file submissions. We really made sure of that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so then I was chatting with her about what I learned at that job, and then later learned that she'd be that in her new job with the state of New Jersey, she was considering working on this code base and adding New Jersey to it. And I'm like, wow,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's, yeah, because I remember that ordering that it
yeah,
was, it's like, oh, look. Um, yeah, and I was thinking about, was thinking about that, you know, that cluster of people interacting with same, domain, and that, if you're in Philadelphia, you could come to the Civic Tech Happy Hour, but the way you get invited is know someone who goes to it. I was thinking about this right before we recorded, and I was like, well, we're not that hard to find.
yeah, yeah. That's right.
So if you want to go, it's not that hard to find it. Oh, but yeah, in that
I
the
would add two
civic.
more.
Go
I
ahead.
would
What were
add two
you?
more things about the tax history
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah.
Um, One is that I remember in 2021 being on a Zoom call with some U.S. Digital Service people,
Right.
about how
USDS.
USDS, about how it was going with the getctc.org website, and like I think they were trying to figure out like how bad is IRS e-file? Should
Mm.
USDS like try to get more involved in e-file as an IRS system, or maybe tax filing as a product angle? And so we talked about it for a while, and I think that I left with a positive impression of them, and I think vice versa. Um, and what what I gathered from the policy people at Code for America was that when getctc.org launched and worked fine for people and helped many people get the child tax credit, the
It did
refundable.
in fact help them get CCC.
Yes, exactly.
It did in
And
fact
they could
deliver.
have gotten it before using a product that Intuit made with the IRS, but it didn't support Spanish and had a few other problems.
Mm.
And yeah, I think that the USDS watched this happen, and they were intrigued that it would be possible for someone to show up out of nowhere and ship an e-file product in like 6 months or something. And the impression I get is that this changed minds in the USDS that e-file could in fact be something to build a product around. It's not just intractable, um, and that meant that, from my understanding, that sort of was a big part of the the push to have the IRS plus the U.S. Digital Service try to make the direct file pilot in the first place. And so I
Mm.
think that the fact that we pulled off an e-file implementation in 2021 is why the IRS tried to make a public-facing product with the help of the U.S. Digital Service. And then we played a supporting role on the state side. I
I
say
mean
we.
that timeline sounds fast for the government doing something, but then you said that the government has wanted to do something about e-file for 20 years.
No, no, no. Modernized, the thing that is called modernized e-file, which is a technical term that
Okay.
um, uh, is the IRS's project that everyone just calls e-file. Um, that thing began 20 years ago. I don't know. They like bought the mainframes and installed them or something 20 years ago. No, I mean modernized e-file is really a collaboration with states to have a bit of consistency with how the IRS and states handle digital tax submissions, and that was put together 20 years ago or so.
Right. So this is more like you're saying, because we've been digitally filing taxes, but we've had to use other things to do it
Yeah,
rather
so
than
modernized
interacting
e-file
with the
is
government ourselves. Or, you'd pay a tax preparer or use an online vendor, and but why can't we just use our own government? Um,
yeah, yeah. And so, like 20 years ago was the create 20-ish years ago with modernized e-file. They made infrastructure for other people to file taxes and
mhm.
give, unlike other people, you know, that
Preparers,
yeah,
yeah, I mean,
preparers
that's
or
other
big,
people.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but that didn't involve a user-facing product, a client-facing product, an
Hmm.
end-user-facing product. Um, but then they decided to try it in 2022-ish, 3-ish. Uh, Yeah, I guess in 2022 they just I don't know. We can look at the history, but it's approximately 2022 that they decided to push to get a direct file pilot to happen, and then it happened and was okay in 2023. Um, right, and I think that it's accurate that I can take some credit for that, because I can take some credit for CFA's thing working out, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's
Um,
very cool.
so I probably changed how Americans file their taxes, or at least
It's
for the
pretty
people who will use
cool.
direct file, which is free.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I think it will be interesting to see the outcomes of when you're talking about the CTC, or we were talking about get your refund, thinking about what if this ends up having some economic justice impacts?
What do you
That
mean?
would
What
be
if
neat.
it is said, it is written that
So it is
child
written.
that the advanced refundable child tax credit is responsible for the largest single decrease in child poverty in U.S. history, or at least the past 10 or 20 years or something, of
So
like
it is written.
30-ish percent or something, and not all of the money that people received due to the advanced refundable child tax credit was distributed to people uh, by getctc.org. Actually, not even half. I think most of it by far was not us, but
Sure.
a fraction was. And anyway, so certainly the advanced refundable child tax credit has had a huge economic justice impact.
Sure.
Um, and uh, yeah, and I guess we'll see about a direct file. One thing we'll see in this regard is if the demographics of filers, you know, the thing, the sometimes I asked myself, what is it that we're doing? Is it that we're trying to save people $100 each
Mm-hmm.
from having to pay for TurboTax?
Sure.
Uh, or is it that we're trying to have people file who wouldn't have otherwise filed? The second angle is the more compelling angle. The people who,
That's more compelling for economic justice
yeah,
in terms
exactly.
of, because if you have enough money, you probably pay someone to deal with your taxes or do whatever. But if you don't, then perhaps you are less likely to.
Yeah, and it's so funny because it's a it's a system where you give the IRS some XML data. Of course, you don't see the XML, and then they give you hundreds or thousands of dollars, uh, which is great. Um,
Great system.
it is. I mean, okay, sure, I can imagine different ones, but yes, the theory for direct file, I guess, is not really that it will necessarily reach otherwise non-filers, although it
Mm-hmm.
probably will, and that'll be already a big deal. It's that it's a stepping stone toward the um, the much discussed dream that the IRS files your taxes for you, basically, and
I
sends
was
you a
hoping you
letter.
would say it. I was like,
Sent you a
because
letter
like
that's
if they
like, "Be
know the
great."
answer,
Aha.
why don't they send me the bill?
I've learned some answers to this question.
You do?
I've
But
learned
if
some
they know
answers.
the answer, why don't they just? Why is it this secret game that we play every
Unfortunately,
year?
as usual, the only good
It's
answer is to
complicated.
question the premise. They don't know the answer. And one of the best things they don't know, most interesting things that they don't know, is who one's children are.
Who's your what children?
Who are one's children? Which is to say, things
I
like
mean, it can change. That does sometimes change from year to year. Like,
it does.
you add one, you remove one, maybe they died.
One of the biggest
Like,
reasons it changes uh, is that a tax filer, be it a married filing jointly couple or a filer filing individually,
mhm,
needs to state the social security number and name of their dependents.
sure.
And if you're a split couple or there's any other ambiguity about who is responsible for this dependent, the IRS doesn't really know what happened in your house or if your house split up. Or if, like, you pass the kids off to the grandparents because some question mark, question mark.
Yeah,
Um,
circumstances, whatever, dot dot dot. Yeah.
yeah. Or if the reason that you're able to claim a dependent is that somebody that depends on you is they became disabled or something.
They
Um,
become independent. Yeah.
yeah. And I think the IRS itself only learns about dependents for the first time when the filer files with that dependent's information. I think the Social Security Administration knows more details about the dependent, but I am not so sure that the two of them chat. That the SSA and the IRS chat beforehand. I think maybe they chat after you
But even
file.
then, I don't think the SSA keeps track of relationships.
I
And I
mean,
think
yeah,
that's the part where I think you're pointing something out, that
yeah,
it's the relationships change. But couldn't that be like a small little form that we fill out
yeah, probably.
that
I mean, in
very
fact,
short?
that's the whole thing. That was getctc.org. It's really
Yeah.
like a website
It's that's right,
to
you said it's people who are very simple. It's like, who are you? You got children? Cool.
you name
Here's
them.
some money.
Yeah, you name them. You give us their soch.
Here's the soch.
You gotta mean it
What we
that
like
they're
to,
yours, and
yeah.
then you file.
Gotta put it on the line. Gotta e-sign it.
And yes, so that's the biggest thing, and the dependence stuff is the biggest factor generally in how big your the anti-poverty credits are for you.
Mm.
So even if the IRS filed like the thing without the dependents, then it would actually be a weird flop. People would be missing out on thousands of dollars, and we would all just have the same question. We would just phrase it differently. Like, why doesn't the IRS give you what you're owed?
Yes. But then now that, like, thinking of it that way, you're kind of cracking open the egg of it's about relationships, makes me think. I mean, I don't have a place I'm going here. It's the how we even structure, that we get to take money, but then also give money back if you are helping other people. And then, like, how does this all work? And that, like, the government has to have an opinion about it.
Well, the government,
That's
the IRS would say it doesn't have an opinion. It has
the
like an
IRS doesn't,
assessment
the
based.
government does, and it implements what the
Yeah,
government
yeah, yeah.
does.
Right. The Congress passes the tax
Sure.
code. Um, right. I mean, there's other. I would
How
say
does
that.
policy even work? Um,
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think that you know, um, 10ish years ago, I already knew about Code for America, but I didn't work there.
mhm.
And that's partly because they didn't have very many staff at the time, probably.
Well,
But
Code for
they,
America, when it first started, was just the fellowship program, and then the staff was very limited. And then it evolved into this, you
yeah,
know, organization that does things.
yeah, that
So,
makes products
yeah,
or does technical consulting.
yeah.
And somewhere in the middle of its journey, Jen Polka, the then CEO, invited the people who had worked on healthcare.gov to give a talk in San
Hmm.
Francisco. And I RSVP'd the heck out of that Eventbrite. I was very interested and I went. But I kept getting emails that the venue would change because too many people kept RSVPing. So they had to move the venue repeatedly. And then eventually we were at the venue. The day arrived and I went. And um, I was really moved by this talk. By the primary speaker that I remember was a guy named Mikey Dickerson.
Hmm.
And the thing that there are two that by far the biggest thing they hammered home was that President Obama had to come to terms with the idea that his signature policy proposal could fail based on how well the computers worked. And I think that this relates to your question of sort of like how does policy
Yeah.
what is the relationship between policy implementation and impact? And I
And all
think that
these
it's
computer things
and all these computer things that now are part of the
that,
implementation.
yeah.
And yeah, uh, and for anyone who doesn't remember, the reason President Obama was so worried was that healthcare.gov, the sign-up website for Obamacare in the beginning, the website sort of basically didn't work at all. initially.
Yes, for those who don't remember, it was a catastrophic failure.
And what is
And
remarkable? Oh yeah, yeah.
it was a remarkable failure. And that just as you correct me, or your version of the lore is that just kind of interested in and invested people were like, I'll help. Like that's what I remember. And that like they kind of injected themselves into the situation that was we were watching this fail that would be perhaps not good. So I will come help.
What they told us in the talk is that President Obama personally called a bunch of the tech people who worked on his campaign,
It
uh,
was a good campaign. Yeah,
and
they were good people.
uh,
So,
he would
yeah.
say to you on the phone, we just want people, we want a handful of people to come to DC, talk to the people making the website, and find out if it can work. And if it can work, that's great. We'll need to figure out how to fix it, and hopefully you can give us advice about that. And if it can't work, then we'd better know that too. So,
Mm,
uh, Mikey Dickerson and a few other people got these phone calls and were invited to get on the next plane to DC from the Bay Area. And they
mm-hmm.
definitely did so. And there they met, as I recall, uh, I think the guy was Todd Park, but I'm forgetting his title. Might have been
Todd Park was
CTO of the
deputy
US.
CTO
Yeah, yeah.
of the United States. I believe deputy for a while,
And
unless I'm
um, and he repeated the question, like, can this work? Um, and so it wasn't so much that people showed up out of nowhere. It's that DC like remembered it had some
called them.
friends and called them.
Yeah, that's
And
probably how most stories like that go. Is actually someone, how did Pam get Asheesh on her podcast? Well, she texted him.
right, right. And
Yeah,
uh and before that, you even proposed the idea in person. There's like, and before that, we already knew each other. Yeah, like,
yeah, right.
and
We already had a relationship.
so,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and yeah, they told this story of trying to find out how the thing worked in order to find out if it could be fixed, concluding that it could be fixed, and then staying for like 6 months as kind of a all day, all night
Slog.
technical management team to understand what different of the 50 plus contracting companies that were involved had problems with each other and with the technology, and um, got them fixed. I definitely remember an anecdote from it where they had called the sort of White House crew, showed up and asked, quote unquote, all essential personnel working on healthcare.gov to come to a meeting, and some people showed up
Mm-hmm.
and they like chatted about what was wrong, and they kept doing this continuously. I think twice plus a day. And at one of these meetings, they were like, "Okay, you say that you haven't turned on that. You say that this other person needs to turn on some database, but this person says they've turned it on. What's going on?" And
What's the
then
deal?
this person would repeat the claim that they haven't. This person would repeat the claim that they had, and the discussion would continue. And then, according to the person giving the talk, it would become clear that these people didn't even have access to the same ticketing system, so they couldn't really communicate, and their like teams certainly couldn't communicate. Uh, and like fractal ball dropping was quite apparent, and the amount of like bringing it all up was quite apparent. It was really moving in this talk because, because what it showed me was that somebody with skills kind of like mine could do something really powerful. They talked about the impact toward the end, and they said that, I think they said, they said that Todd Park told them with the current sign up numbers, they were sort of planning to write a press release to get with like between 2 and 4 million people enrolled in Obamacare. And I think by the end there were 7 on the day, on the like closing day, million people. And so you think about this gap of what was planned sort of by DC, and then what with the work to fix the technical stuff happened. And
Mm-hmm.
3 to 5 million more people in America had healthcare coverage. And uh, there's a lot that we can say that's like wrong with and tough about American healthcare, but uh, you can also think about the positives and say that many of these people like got medical treatment for medical problems they have. That's their actual lives.
Yeah.
That's the just an amazing thing you can sort of do with computers, apparently. So I found that really moving, that talk.
Yeah.
And I also, the other thing that was quite apparent was that it was very difficult,
It
like
sounded very
emotionally.
hard and annoying. Yeah. I was thinking about, I mean, it's one of those things where it's just like, this is the people in that talk, but, um, do you like, what do you do with your apartment or your family? Like that you just were like, oh, I'm in DC now. That's
Well, they were only supposed to be there for 3 days or a week or something to find out if the
mm-hmm.
website would be able to be
Right. And then
fixed.
it turned into,
And
you just roll with it, I guess.
yeah, I mean, they chose to, but yeah, it's a big commitment. So I've been sort of looking for what I could do that would be impactful and something I could sort of stick with and not just like panic in the middle of and fail at, which was what I would predict would happen, sort of, if I did that, what they were doing.
Mm.
Uh,
But I
so
mean, if
the
it was
CFA
something that
stuff fit the bill.
if you cared enough about it, like, and that it's,
Yeah, I mean, I would make good friends with the people I was working on it with, and we would all figure it out
yeah,
together.
it all comes down to relationships
Yeah,
and,
and
and,
ticketing systems.
and ticketing systems. It all comes down to relationships and ticketing systems. That's going to be the tagline for this episode. And so you said that you were thinking about you're thinking about what you want to be your next big thing. Is
Well,
that
I
something
was
I
thinking
heard?
about that then, from like
Ah, from listening
mid
to that talk, you
2014
were like,
onwards.
oh, okay. And then that kind of led eventually toward the CFA thing, toward,
Yeah,
more public service.
yeah,
Yeah. But then you don't do public service now.
no, that's correct. Certainly not as a job.
Yeah.
Um,
You're raising
uh,
a small human.
that's true.
I, you know, I personally I'm in the camp where thanks for doing that. We
Yeah,
appreciate it.
he's very welcome to it, and so are you.
Yeah.
Um, um, yeah, yeah. I mean, I sort of vaguely planned, starting around 2012ish. I sort of retconned my career so far as alternating between sort of what I considered high impact public interest, something
Hmm.
useful to many people.
And a
On
jobby
one
job.
hand, and what do you say?
And a jobby job.
Well, yeah, a jobby
That's what I
job.
call them is when you have a jobby job. Like it's like I mean, I would describe my job right now as a jobby job. It's fine.
My
Um,
bar for jobby jobs is that I would like it, if possible, for me to be really improving my capabilities through it.
yeah. Ideally, yeah, it needs to be intellectually engaging.
Yeah, yeah, and
Hmm.
like not just engaging, like growth somehow. Um, uh, yeah,
How do you define that though? In that I'm starting to feel that I'm hitting the point where I'm forgetting the things I used to know, which
yeah,
is fine, and I actually don't really stress out about it. It's I think it's fine when you've been doing stuff for over 10 years to start to forget stuff or just honestly not have put it into like maybe it was only in medium term storage because everything changes so you don't actually have a guarantee that it would be worth remembering. I mean, I spent a lot of my programming time in JavaScript, and so when I didn't do it for a few years, I did not stress about it because I figured it would be different by the time I got back. And you know what?
sure.
It was. So,
Yeah, well, it varies, and certainly, um, whether or not I'm learning something at a jobby job, as you say, there's the aspect of it that it should be like uh, preferably well paying. The nice thing about having a well paying job in between public interest jobs is you don't necessarily have to think a lot about the pay. Well, I guess the way that I thought about it in the past, and maybe I do still, and maybe I don't, was that um, having a high paying job in between them uh, means that whatever is like an impactful thing to do, I'll if I am attracted to it, even if it pays way worse than what I would otherwise
Yes.
make, I can
The
afford
money's
to
not
make the
the
choice.
issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've sort of wondered about that since working at CFA because my job at CFA paid fine, uh, and there's some degree to which like the the next high impact job, the next like public interest oriented job that I have will probably also pay fine. I don't know, but it seems like they're findable. Um,
Hmm.
uh, but I don't know. Maybe it'll be something totally different, and I'll be glad to have the savings.
Yeah. Or have priorities will shift and who knows
Yeah,
what.
I think that one of the subtleties that dawned on me at work while working at CFA is that part of I mean, the reason I was able to do something so useful at for the IRS and the American public is that I did it in the context of a great team.
Yes.
And for that great team to exist, you've got a lot of things have to be in place. And some of them end up resulting in the idea that the job you'll join will be a sort of normal paying job. So that
Yeah.
in order to have like
So
a
that
team
you
around
can
you.
attract people who, you know, do need to get paid in
Yeah,
order to
exactly.
live.
Yeah. Uh,
Otherwise, you only get, yeah. I'm flashing
yeah.
back to some other previous experiences.
Yeah. Um, yeah. And I mean, the idea of Code for America's products having a policy goal, working toward a policy goal, really worked. I think in many cases,
Mm,
get CalFresh, get your refund to some extent,
yeah.
but certainly get CTC to file your state taxes. They like caused something outside of Code for America to get better in a policy way or in a product way, and that requires like this like depth of commitment. Yeah, that usually paying people is essential for.
Yeah.
But who knows? You know, it could be that like I'll meet someone in Philly who is part of a like anarchist commune of people who
I mean,
all
there's plenty of them in West
like
Philadelphia.
work
Yeah.
at cafes in the day and then at night like are working on some astonishing project that I really want to join, and I'll be able to do it because the job in the
Yeah.
middle paid me something.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, as for like what it means to be learning or growing is what I said. I think I don't stress it too much, but um, I mean, when I joined, when I joined Eventbrite, where I worked for like not even a year and a half as a security engineer, and then I worked
Hmm.
at Sandstorm, a like security product startup for 2 years. Very fun, but doomed in the end as a company, although the software is still around as open source. Um, anyway, when I worked at Eventbrite, I learned like what it's like to work at a real tech company, and that was pretty useful. Like,
Yeah.
I learned what product managers are for. I learned what it's like to measure how well a feature does and who
Hmm.
uses it. I learned a reason that mobile app engineers don't open source the mobile apps for the company that they work for. That reason is although they personally as engineers want to open source maybe an iOS app for the company they work for, uh, they get direction from marketing that it would be terrible if they did because it would result in the ability for other people to scoop what features the company was working on, and marketing wants to control the news cycle so the code won't be open source. Amazing. Like the amount of deep uh I call that growth, like learning about like the world
Well,
I'm
yeah,
in.
that's not necessarily a technical thing that you're learning. You're learning something.
Yeah. I'm learning how to be more effective in the world that we are all in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's enough. That's plenty. That's a lot.
Mm. I feel like if that's your mindset, then you're set up for success because I don't know how you couldn't learn somewhere.
I mean,
Like,
the best way to not learn somewhere, maybe, is to,
how do I stop learning, Ashish? I'm done. How do I quit?
well, I don't know. I mean, the, I guess, I guess
I
it's
came
not
up
just that
with
you're
I came
learning.
up with a theory, but then it's perhaps it's just shady. Um,
Well,
but
I'm trying to
my theory
decide,
is that I think it's the only way you wouldn't, because then, ooh, maybe this circles into, and perhaps in my values that I suspect that you also share, that it is that learning and growing is actually possibly one of the purposes of being the human being and living a human life, not just at a job, but just in general. That
yeah,
something happened, it didn't go so great. What did I learn from it is the most important thing, and that's irrespective of a job. Is it's if I hurt my friend's feelings, if something went really well, how did that go well, and then you do the thing where you try to recreate it and then you realize that that doesn't work and that you have to accept each experience as its own unique thing that happened. And so then the shady take was, I think, the only way you decide not to learn is you decide to really like not care in the like nihilistic way,
yeah, exactly. I think
just like
that,
purely like, oh, everything is pointless, and so like, and then not growing, and then that's it's not a thing I want to do.
yeah, exactly. An excessive amount of
Doesn't
disengagement is how
sound
you don't learn.
fun.
Yeah. Uh, an excessive amount of disengagement can happen for any number of reasons. And, like, if it happens for only a small amount of time, like merely months or something, that's, like, terrible, but uh, is not, well, it's bad, but it's not abysmal
Bad but
yet,
not
necessarily.
insurmountable.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, I mean, sometimes we get depressed, it
Yeah.
happens, and then hopefully we get better, get
I,
less sick.
I was talking with a friend who, I was talking with a friend who has an acquaintance who seems to only call my friend when the acquaintance when something is going badly for the acquaintance.
Oh, I know. I don't even know
But
which person you're
it's
talking about,
not
but I
it's
know
not
this. That's a common tale.
it's a common tale, but I think
That
the
is a
normal
common tale. I can think of
framing.
someone in my life who does this with me, and I never hear from them except for, "Hey, I need to talk for an hour about stuff going on,"
The normal
and
framing is like sort of negative, like emotional vampire. But here it's
eh,
like the my friend likes talking to this person. He doesn't
yeah.
want anything bad to happen to them. But he's like, at least he's like actually glad they reconnect when they do. Um, and yeah, but I guess like he got contacted by his friend who he only hears from when something bad is happening, and then he didn't hear from that person for a week, and then like wondered if things had gotten worse for his friend. And
Mm.
we spoke on the phone a week ago, and uh, yeah, he was like having trouble making it hour by hour with how stressed he was worrying about it. And so I guess like
Oh,
the
the person was worrying about the friend they hadn't heard from, and they were that stressed that they hadn't heard from the person who was only, but the other person was operating on a broadcast only system.
sure, yeah,
So if
that
someone's operating on a broadcast only system, then seems okay, unless I hear different because they're a broadcast only system.
well, so what you're describing is an attitude, and what I'm just trying to say is that
Your friend did not share this attitude.
yeah, that like uh, you do need to sometimes it's very painful to be in the painful situation, even if we would say, "Oh yeah, just like deal with being bored at work for a few months." Like, no, that can be painful day to day, hour to hour, also. But if it's not, then okay, also. Uh, I guess it's like case by case how personally bad it is in the situation. But
Hmm.
yeah, the way to. But even then, like the thing you might learn, haha, the thing you might learn is like, well, you want to leave this job and work with some friends you know. But then the thing you might learn is that that's not a good enough criterion for deciding on a company to work for. In fact, uh,
Or maybe it is.
maybe. Uh, I thought it was a good criterion for me when starting Open Hatch version 1, the startup in 2009. Uh, it was a bad criterion at another job I had. And I guess I didn't think about the ways in which the situations weren't comparable.
Yeah.
Oh well.
I would say that the learning strategy is also that everything's an experiment. And so we try some stuff out and we see how it goes and then we learn from it. And
That's a
I've,
very just
people
so story
gotta,
framing, though.
people have to go on their own experiments and go on their own journeys, which I've had a hard time accepting for myself.
They do.
So,
They also, but that what other people do in their own experiments, it's true that you and I have little control over. Uh, what I do in my experiments in practice is to let them drag on for far longer than I need because I've
in
already
your own
gathered enough data.
experiments,
Yeah, I've already gathered
mm,
enough in many cases. I mean, when things aren't working job wise, I often stick around too long because I'm like, oh, I'll figure something out. No, I probably won't. I guess I've learned that. I won't like. There's some amount of time that's shorter than I used to think for how long to stick around if I can try to. Well, I guess before trying to leave. I'm not saying that I should necessarily abruptly quit the job that I had that where I thought things weren't working, but I probably should have been working harder to leave them earlier.
yeah. But even then, I would say that, you know, knowing that, especially since like both of us have kind of followed the a few years or a couple to a few years at companies, I don't think we are people who have a problem changing things.
I don't
I don't think
know.
it's us. I think
Okay.
that that applies more to someone whose story might sound like that they've been at the same place for 7 years.
But what if I don't know? That's a weird external
Because I
perspective.
say this because I've been transparently complimented by people on my ability to quit things.
Good. Is
People
that
have
how you
said
feel about them
something I love
internally?
about you, Pam, is that you quit.
But is that how you feel about them internally also?
Uh, I actually have some internal turmoil over whether I stick around long enough
Right,
and like in
right.
the other direction. And so then something that I've been experimenting with a few times is what does it feel like to stick around? And actually, the lesson is it feels bad. So, uh, so it has taught me that I'm right and that the real answer is to quit.
Just do what
And
the F you want to.
and that's why one day when I finish my zine, Real Winners Quit, uh, it'll you know, you can buy it on the Patreon probably
Great.
when the Patreon exists. The zine doesn't exist. I did make a Patreon for this, but oh my gosh, it's been
Good.
so awesome talking to you, Asheesh. Do you have anything like that you want to hype? Any projects or anything? People do you use social media that people can follow you on the internet, or you just disappear back into the void?
I mean, if anyone wants to talk with me, you can email me.
Yeah.
Uh,
How do they email you?
oh, right. My email address is Asheesh, my first name, ASHEESH, at asheesh.org.
We keep it
If you
simple.
want to talk with me, it'd be better if you come over, though, because uh, it's like I'll probably be juggling the baby.
Because
But
there's a baby around. There's things to do.
yeah. Or there's things to like be concerned if I have to do. Um, yeah.
Sure.
Uh, what do I want to plug? I
You
think
could plug something else. It doesn't have to be your thing. You could just be like, here's the thing I think is cool that I want to tell people about. We don't have to, we're making up the rules as we go.
Yeah, I mean, if I mean, I think Code for America must have like an email marketing list in which
Sure,
they
they probably
brag
have an
about
email newsletter.
the amazing stuff they do.
I think there's also, if we're in that vein, I really like Tech for Good has a really nice newsletter. I've enjoyed their newsletters. They post some job opportunities and things like that on there. I think they even have a mentorship program. Tech for Good or Tech for All, Tech for Humans.
Wow! Look, it's announced Code for America, State of Maryland. Oh wait, never
Oh,
mind. That's a
okay.
different one.
Nope. You
That's
found a thing on
NJ.
the internet.
We'll
Anyway,
do. Well, there we go.
um,
That's super cool. I guess like periodically look at the Code for America blog, look at what the tax team has been doing, and cheer them on. That's
oh,
my actual.
send
That's my
positive
actual thing.
energy, send some likes or whatever their way.
Yeah. I mean, read the things like the who knew you could solve one of. Oh, I guess I do have another thing to plug. Who knew you could begin to solve, make serious headway in solving one of the most famous American policy problems, the like difficulty filing your taxes, by writing a Rails app. What the heck? I used to hate
It's
Rails. Those
wild.
like weird scumbags who just wanted to make themselves rich. Uh,
Those weird people who just want to make it easy to write a, you know, a simple, MVC app that is decently scalable for most cases.
ah,
Um,
but they always wanted to make some stupid app. But this time we made a good one.
Great.
Um, and yeah, so look, like I just saw that CFA is working with Maryland on tax estate filing. Amazing. Um, I didn't talk much about PDF files and extract and JavaScript in PDF files and extracting New York State's tax math
And
from
that's
the
a
PDF.
another
But
episode.
but I'll just say that you can do that, and so you can look at some PDFs with QPDF. Actually, that's the tool to use.
Just some.
Uh, but then the other thing I want to plug is over the past year or two, I've been reading a lot of Matt Iglesias' newsletter and
Yes, you got me
Noah
onto this. Wait,
Noah
is that
Smith's.
that's is that the one that you got me on, or that's a different one, the finance one?
Probably. Oh well, Matt Levine. That's more
Matt
yours.
Levine. Oh, different Matt.
Matt Levine is not as
My
important as Matt
bad.
Iglesias. Matt Levine is definitely funnier. But Matt Iglesias and Noah Smith have both been writing a lot, and I really like their Substack newsletters how about sort of medium liberal politics. And something that has become clear to me reading their newsletters is that a lot of the problems that I thought were like unsolvable 20 years ago when I was in college and was like starting a chapter of the Johns Hopkins University Students for an Orwellian Society, sarcastically encouraging us to go to war with Iraq. Uh,
Oh
like
no, the
all of
uncanny
those
valley. Oh no.
uh, all of those things I was so worried about, and reading leftist screeds about how we would never solve some of these problems. All those things I was worried about, a lot of them just like got solved and no one told me. Um, so like,
Is
uh,
that'd be a cool website? Things that got fixed but no one told you.
I think that the Our World in Data blog, which I for 3 to 4 years ago, like would regularly reload their COVID dashboards, and then it turns out they have other
Mm,
dashboards too.
right. Yeah.
Uh, they have a blog post about this kind of idea that things are better than they ever have been, and
Yeah.
also uh, have a long way to go before they're as good as they could be. And
Sure.
it's important to appreciate both sides of that. It's very easy to focus only on the things that are not as good as they could be. But one of the bugbears of my time at the college student reading leftist screeds was the list actually goes on and on. But the one I was thinking of is the uh,
I'm trying to wrap
massive
up here.
the massive American defense budget. The massive American defense budget was a common talking point among liberals that it's like weirdly big. It's a weirdly big fraction of GDP. It's a weirdly
Mm-hmm.
big ratio globally. What are we doing? Quit
Mm-hmm.
it. Spend some money on some nice things instead.
Right.
Uh, And in fact, if you look at a graph, that happened. The fraction of the American GDP
It
that
has
gets
actually
spent on
happened. We still
defense.
spend a lot of money on defense,
Yeah, but the
but
fraction has been
but
going
the
down.
thing we were arguing about was the percentage of the pie,
And it's going
and that
down
has in fact changed.
continuously.
Yeah.
American CO2 emissions have like flatlined and slightly decreased in the past like 10 plus years. Like, what? I hear
Yeah.
so much about all the work there is to do for climate change, and there is a lot of work to do. But
Absolutely.
also, like, what? No one told me the emissions have flatlined and are decreasing already by the US.
Well,
What?
that was before Gen AI, but
We'll see. Yeah. Well, I'll
all
leave it
right.
at that for now.
Well, I'm gonna wrap us up now and say that we do have this show has social media at Instagram at techcult.podcast, on YouTube at techcultpodcast, and it is ignore all previous instructions. I did recently make a Patreon in case that's a thing you want to do. I also made stickers, and I remember I was going to hold one up here, but I forgot that I was going to do that, so I gave it to my friend. But there are stickers now. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Asheesh. I always love talking to you. So
Same, Pam. Thanks for
thanks.
having me. See ya sometime
See
next
you.
week, probably.
Yes.
Ciao.